I got a great message from someone on LinkedIn today about interviewing at Amazon. I want to read that message to you and then provide some insights into how to do well during the Amazon interview. So here is the message. Hey John, I passed the phone screen with the recruiter last week, and I would love to know if you can give me some advice on how I should prepare for a phone interview with the hiring manager. After doing some research, it seems like Amazon product manager interviews are not the typical PM interview, product design, strategy, execution, etc., that you'd see at Facebook and other organizations. It seemed like all the interviews for Amazon product manager roles are more focused on the 14 leadership principles and the behavioral style. Just wanted to make sure I am preparing for the next round correctly. The role is for a senior product manager, tech. Thanks. All right, so this is a great set of questions, and I want to talk through a couple different things. I took some notes on this to make sure that I hit all the points for you. The first one that I want to talk about is the leadership principles to not focus on and why, to save yourself some time. So there's some context here on some leadership principles that you don't really need to even worry about, depending on the role type you're in. We'll go through that. The second thing is what the interviewer is likely going to do, what the process is going to be. And the third thing that I want to talk about is the strategy for your success. So let's jump right into it. The first thing, there are 14 leadership principles. That's true. Amazon is 100%, well, not 100%, but in most all roles, they focus really strongly on the behavioral interview style. Other companies are very different, but it seems as if Amazon has been sticking with the 14 leadership principles for the most part. There are two leadership principles that if you're not a manager, well, one of them, if you're not a manager, you don't really need to focus on. And the other one, I would say, is largely never asked, or at least in all the interviews that I've done, or interview loops that I've been on with a number of different people. It's a question set and leadership principle that rarely gets touched on. So the first one is hire and develop the best. It's largely going to be asked for a manager. So if you're in a manager role, you should definitely focus on that leadership principle. But if you're not, there's no reason for you to study that because it's just for management. The second one is frugality. Back in the day for Amazon, the culture was very much in the mindset of do more with less. You'll see some pictures of Jeff Bezos back in like early 2000s with this desk made out of a crappy Home Depot door and some brackets on the side. That culture is still a part of Amazon today. So if we ever go back from COVID into an office setting, you'll see a lot of desks made out of doors, and they're called door desks. So it's kind of a remnant of the old culture. I appreciate the sentiment of doing more with less. I think it's really important, but it is rarely going to be asked, whether you're in a management role or an individual contributor role, because they want to focus more on things like ownership and deliver results when it comes to these PM type of interviews. So for the most part, I would focus on not worrying about those two and then really worrying about the other 12. If you need to know what those 12 are, you can look them up. I'll do another video on a breakdown of each leadership principle, but that's not necessarily the topic of this video. The next topic here is what the interviewer is likely going to do. All right, so usually what the interviewer does is they pick one or two leadership principles, and they only focus on one or two questions per leadership principle. So they only have 45 minutes, and their goal is to go super deep. They want to what's called peel back the layer of the onion. And the layer of the onion is the depth of your story. They really want to probe, and they use that word, they want to probe deep into your psychology. They want to understand what you did, not what the team did, and they want to parse out what they think you would be able to contribute to the organization individually. And that's a really important factor. Like, you definitely don't want to use words like we when it comes to the interviewer, because the first thing they're going to do is they're going to cue into that word and say, well, what did you do? And I know culturally, certain people don't like talking about their individual contributions because they know the group is, it's a group thing. But they definitely want to know just the slice of what you did, so you can get into a story about how the team did X and Y, setting context, but then really diving into the vein of what you did, what you owned, what you didn't own, because those are some of the layers of the onion that they're going to try to parse through. So let's say, for example, they ask you a question. I have a question up right here for the leadership principle, think big. So I'm the hiring manager, let's just say, for example, and I ask you this question. Tell me about a time you're working on an initiative or goal and saw an opportunity to do something much bigger than the initial focus. This is an actual Amazon question for the leadership principle, think big. They very well could ask this question. You should be delivering that answer in the STAR method. So situation, task, action, result. The situation is the high-level context. It is the problem statement. Ideally, you want to frame it as a problem statement because that hooks the listener, right? That gets them to pay attention. There was a problem that we were facing. Oh, interesting. That's how Amazon thinks. Problem, action steps, solution. We're very dry when it comes to here's the problem statement, here's the action steps, here's the result. When it comes to any documentation, anything that we do, that is typically the format. So situation, high-level context, think about it as you're kind of setting it up as if the person across from you was in 8th grade, right? Like they know nothing about you, what you've done in the past. You're telling them a story as if you're talking to a little kid, and you're not using acronyms or anything like that. You're painting a big picture. You're hooking the reader. You're telling them very clearly what the problem is. The task is the goal, right? I uncovered this problem. Here's the thing that I did. I set this goal. The baseline, I measured the baseline of the problem. Here it was. I set a goal to increase the baseline from X to Y. And over the course of 3 months, I took 3 particular action items. Action item number 1, plain as day. Here's what I did. Action item number 2, action item number 3, and the result was, right? I increased the thing, I decreased the thing, whatever it might be, over a certain period of time. You want to time bound your answers. They are going to then pick apart your answer like you've never had an answer picked apart before. This is a typical Amazonian behavior. We like asking a million whys. You have to really have your stories memorized. You have to really have a lot of knowledge in your stories. You don't want to embellish your answers because they are going to find out if you are telling the truth or not. They are essentially trying to get to the truth. That is their goal with the interview. So the next thing is the psychology of the interviewer. So they're looking to see if you either meet the bar, exceed the bar, or don't meet the bar. At the end of all of your interviews, let's say you make it to the final rounds, people come together and they have this chart and it's red, green, yellow, stoplights. And it's just a chart of stoplights. And you go around the room and everybody reads the feedback from each person. And they're reading in the STAR method. Situation, this is what the person faced. This is the task they did. This is the action. This is the result. If there's no data in your answer, you will likely fail or not be passed through to the next round of your interview. Amazon is insanely data heavy. You have to have data-driven answers, but the context of the role really matters. So if you're interviewing for a senior product manager role, you got to be thinking about stories that are as big as physically possible, like the biggest things you've done, right? If it's a dive deep leadership principle, where is the time that you've dove the most to get to the root, right? Things like that are very, very important, right? You have to showcase the best stories. I've had some people give me stories from like 10 years ago, and the first thing I ask is like, geez, there's a lot of history here. Why did this person why did this person give me an answer from 10 years ago? That's really interesting. They only thought big 10 years ago. So these are the kind of things that the interviewer is going to be thinking through at each answer that you give. And you want to be able to, with the answer you provide, be in the exceeds the bar. You want to be in the green column, or at least meets the bar. Because, for example, if you go through the interview and everybody down the line meets the bar. The bar raiser in the interview loop, who's not going to be on your team, they're an objective third party. They're always injected into your interview loops at the end. They might just say, nope, not an Amazonian fit, or not a fit for the team, right? They can veto the decision ultimately. So your goal is that every story needs to be exceeding the bar, green. And you won't know the context of that, before you go in. But all you can do before you go in is at least ensure that every story you have is the most impactful story. Okay, that's it. In summary, there's 2 leadership principles that you largely don't need to focus on. We talked about what the interviewer is likely going to do. Each person focuses on only 1 or 2 leadership principles. So for this individual, that interviewer is going to hit them with maybe think big, maybe dive deep, and they're going to ask 1 or 2 questions in each, and they're going to just have prod you with follow-up questions until they understand deeply about what you did. And then as far as strategies for your success, just make sure you're using the biggest stories that you can think of, the best, most impactful stories across all the leadership principles, depending on which one they hit you with, and use the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. That's all I got for you on this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe for more content. We'll talk to you soon.